Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the show. Oof. Today on TFT, where we are talking about the vanished. Oh my, oh my. This is a creepy one, guys. I went out. Of course, every week I do research for the TFT topic to make sure I can have a
Where are the
conversation about
bodies,
it.
Mister?
Well, I'm not. I'm not telling. I'm certainly not.
Where did you put the bodies?
But it was a creepy one, Booster. I'm telling you, man. This is
Mhm.
going to be an interesting show. It's almost more would have been better as a Halloween show, to be honest with you. But we're going to get into it. It's going to be fun. Uh,
Spooky.
spooky, spooky. Yeah, and of course, as you guys can see, we have the pie expert from Tasmania is with us today. That oily bird, a Booster.
Hello, it's me. It's a little pie today. I haven't been into pies lately. I think I'm sick of them. I ate
Yeah,
them too much.
that's
I
sacrilege,
my
sir. That's sacrilege.
my lunch is an apple.
Uh
That's
oh, he's
this is
dieting. He
my
must have went to the
yeah
doctors.
yeah. I'm too fat. I
Too fat.
gotta get
Yeah.
rid of some of it, and so the ladies will want to have sex with me again.
I see. Well, that's always a good pursuit. And it's fair pursuit too. I think all young
Mhm.
men, single men should feel that way. When you get a little bit
I
older, you
had
can put a
sex
bit of punch.
once.
Huh?
What?
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 Huh?
No.
Okay.
Good lord.
But anyway, always happy to have you here, Booster. You're always the most knowledgeable person when it comes to actually talking about
Absolutely.
stuff.
Yeah.
He
I know stuff
he does. He
and
does.
things
Yes. And
at the
things.
same time.
But
Yes.
awesome, guys. Very happy to have you here. And of course, I'm going to come over and say hello to the chat momentarily before we get into it. But before I do that, I have another introduction to do, of course, and it's a rather important one as usual. So I should not delay and just get right to it. And therefore, I say that rising
Oh.
from the sea,
Mm-hmm.
the head of an island
Preach it.
reaches into the sky, breaching the
Oh Lord.
waves. Lightning shatters the quiet
Mm.
of early dawn. There, standing on the mountaintop,
Oh, there he is.
judging the worthiness of those below,
Judge me, baby.
stands Thundero.
Oh Lord.
Oh, Booster.
Crazy.
Booster, you've missed your calling as a hype man. You should definitely look into that. Find
Bro,
somebody who can rap and just be their hype man. That should be your
Mhm.
job.
he's already got a job. He's right here.
Oh Lord.
I want
Hello
to be.
everybody.
I want to be a black churchgoer. That's what I want to be. That's my dream.
Hey man, they know how to have fun. I'll tell you what, because church is
I know.
boring.
I see it. I see it on TV and movies and shit. I'm like, that looks so fun. That is so cool. I want to be one of those black people at church. That's my dream.
There you go. He has a
Yeah.
dream. He's a boy with
hmm
a dream.
I have a dream that I'm gonna interrupt church. Oh
Actually,
shit.
I've been to a couple gospel churches, and they're a lot of fun, dude. They know how to have fun. I think that's part of the thing. It's like, damn, we got to go to church. All right, well, let's make it entertaining at least. Black
Mhm.
people know how to have fun in a church. That's for damn sure. And the good singing and the dancing and the shaking of the booties. I always thought that was funny, though. You're in church; it's supposed to be a reverent place, right? But they shake them booties. They love shake them booties.
I gotta
So
go to that church.
yeah, that's a good church, right? Good church.
Yeah.
So, where you come from and your hidden lair there, Thundero, do you have booty shaking churches?
Oh, of course. Of course
Sweet.
we do. I don't know how much booty shaking happens, but there is definitely extremely celebratory. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
Churches around.
yeah. I don't want to go to the snake handling ones. I don't think that sounds
No,
fun.
no.
Let's stay away from those. Yeah, I know. I of course was raised as a Northern Baptist, a hard-nosed Baptist as we call it, and they were not going to have any fun here today at all. We're going to sing a couple hymns. We're going to make sure that we do it dourly. No
Yes.
dancing, no dancing, none of
No.
that. No, none of those colors. What's up? Colors? My goodness. Yeah.
Oh no.
That explains so much.
Oh no, dude! I definitely grew up in a Northern Baptist church. I mean, didn't we all? I mean, if you're an American, what is the chance that
No.
you grew up in the church? I mean, what,
It's
60
pretty
to
high.
eighty
Pretty
percent
high.
chance, right?
Yeah. Mine was a, I guess technically northern, but it was Independent Baptist.
Oh, well, those independents, they're wild and crazy. They allow
Yeah.
Brown. Yeah, but no, I mean, we actually had actually the preacher we had when I was a kid. I loved that guy. Everyone loved him, of course. He was a very good man, a sweet man, and he passed away. Just getting old. And then they had a long time that they were trying to get a new preacher in. They had a hard time with it, and during that time, I became like what 16 or something, or I got old enough where I could say, yeah, enough of this nonsense. And but of course, I went to college at that time too, so I was able to kind of get away from the monotony of it. But it is interesting that when I left, the preacher that they had in trying out was a Mennonite preacher, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Hmm. It is interesting.
Yeah. But we're not here to talk about boring church services or booty shaking
No, no.
ones either. We're
It's a
here to
shame.
talk about the vanished. Oh my boy,
Oh,
I tell you what.
who is
Um,
vanished?
it's a big subject, and I'm going to jump into my primer real
Mm.
quick, but I want to come hello over and say hello to the chat. I'm not going to get into it today with the corona virus, or the corona chan as it should be called. But
As
do
the Chinas.
Yeah, the Chinas, yeah, the Wu flu or the Kung flu. That's my favorite. I like that one.
Mm.
But
I like the Winnie the Flu.
Winnie the Flu, I like that too. That's a good one too. But no, it's COVID-19, because we're going to make sure it has no connection to China whatsoever. And the WHO
uh,
just continues to lie more and more and more. Yeah, impressive. But
mhm.
yeah, it's pretty bad. But we're not going to get into that today, and we'll see. We're going to get a pretty big update here, I think, in the next week or two. But anyway, that's not for today. Hellrod is in here. He says, talk about Vanish. We are going to, dude. Raj Heller as
We'll
well.
get around
Nice.
to it.
Yeah, we're going to get around to it. Is another episode of Unsolved Mysteries today is Vanished, and the people that are pictured behind the milk carton. True, true, true. I
Mm.
think we should talk about the people behind the making of the milk cartons. That might answer a lot.
Oh,
Yeah. John Diller says, I am so friggin' hyped for the show. Awesome. Damn it. Be more hyped. More hyped. Curious
More hype.
2A says, beer, cigs, TFT, and knife sharpening. Doesn't get much better. Oh, dude, I have a fun sharpening your knives. I actually have all that kind of stuff too. I was thinking about getting into a knife making and grinding and all that
Please,
kind of stuff.
please don't stab me.
Yeah, but here I talked to the police about it, and they said, well, we'd probably have to arrest you, but whatever you like. So okay, no.
I thought they like sharpened their katanas and wakazashis
Oh,
of your village wakizashi.
you kind of need a license just to walk around in Japan. I mean, it's kind of like the licensing
Lame.
capital of the world. Yeah, it is pretty lame.
License. Oh no.
Licensing, yeah. Rodwell
Lic-
Stevens says, "Hello, TFT." Well, hello to you, Rodwell. We got Eagle 43
Hello.
in here, and he's looking bewildered and slightly cautious. Kuzmeni, hey, Kuzmeni says hello. Eric Hawkins is in here. He says, "Hey, everyone, don't listen to a word he says. He lies." Mike Dalton is in here. He says, "Hey, 411." Yeah, dude. We're going to get into that, brother. And Lone Star Viper says, hello. Cool names, man. Curious 2A says, no, Booster, not the doctor. Now you got the diabetes.
I got the diabetes. I walked in, I was fine, and the doctor says, boom, diabetes.
You got the
Out of nowhere.
diabetes.
That's
You,
what
you,
doctors do to you.
you're done. Tolfer says, clipping. Are we clipping? Really?
He's gonna clip us, he's gonna report us to the comic Twitter police.
No, there might snakes equal not fun. Yeah, I'd agree. Flat booties don't shake. Excuse me,
Hmm.
Radwell. I have me a perfectly round and shapely booty. My wife tells me often she likes to touch it.
Nice.
Nice model. So model, do you want in here, dude? I forgot. I'm sending a link
Did
to
you not
model.
give Model the link?
I know I'm such a jerk,
You
dude.
piece of crap. I'll do it. You keep reading
All
the
right, okay,
chat.
you do that.
Oh
Thank
my
you.
god.
Guzmany, brother Joshua, hail Raven. Eric Hawkins, finish your boat before you start making knives. I always said I was thinking about it years and years ago, but it's just something I couldn't do. Which is kind of all those things which led me to the boat building, because it was one of the things that Japan let me do. Right? It's weird, but anyway, I had to get licenses for it. Do you know that I'm a very rare foreigner in Japan, Thundero? I have a license for dynamite.
oh, wait a
How
minute.
do you?
So
All right, stop the show. How the hell do you get a license for dynamite, and for what purpose? I am curious.
I have a good friend of mine. His family's been making and selling in various accoutrements of dynamite making for hundreds of years. And I he was very busy and needed some help, so I went and helped him out. I had a lot of fun with it actually. But in order for me to go into certain places to get dynamite and drive dynamite truck, which I was doing, I had to have a license. So I went in and I took a license. It was funny because I had this really old dude, and as I'm just kind of just going through answering the questions, it wasn't that hard. He was asking, do you need a translation? You're okay? You okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. He says, "Yeah, that one right there. I don't know. I think B is the best answer for that one." I was like, "Oh, thank you." Yeah, you know, it wasn't very valid, but I have one anyway. So I guarantee you, I'm a very rare foreigner in Japan that actually has a license for dynamite. I can transport it. I can enter it in areas and buy it. So watch out.
Oh my god.
Yep,
I'll stay away from Chester.
stay away. Yeah. But yeah, of course, the boat is the thing that I can do. So I'm going to be working on
I
that.
think dynamite is something we need to add to your eye and ear ripping lore of the Chester Busby.
It's kind of
That's
boring,
right.
though, to be honest with you.
Dynamite. No, there's so much good fan art of Chester. They could be holding dynamite now. You kidding me? It's
That's
awesome.
true. That's true. That is true. That is true. But nah, I mean, I had a lot of fun with it. Actually, it was a lot of fun. Because I'm the type of person. I mean, I'm a white collar worker, obviously, from being a teacher and stuff. But I like blue collar work too, because I like something physical to keep myself in shape. And throwing around 5, 10 tons of dynamite and
Oh
keep you
my
in shape,
god,
brother.
you're Vinny from Atlantis.
I might be able to be. I could be. Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
possible. Uh, what? What more? I gave you an explosives license, right? Right? If they only
Mm-hmm.
knew. Yeah. But a lot of things are like that. If you're hooked into the culture here, you can get any license you want pretty easy, actually. If you're not, well, you'll never get it ever. Nevertheless, I've caught up with the chat, and it's time for me to do my primer, I think. I think it's
All
time.
right, let's go. Let's go.
All right, here we go, guys. So let me share here so these guys can see what I'm doing. But well, it's going to be an interesting show today. It's really creepy, man. It's super creepy. All right, there we go. All right, here we go. Well, as you guys know, I always do a primer, and today, of course, we're doing talking about Vanished. Ooh, look at that. That's pretty cool. I like the animation. Watch it for a second. It moves. It blinks at you. Now, of
That's
course,
really
the
spooky.
it is spooky. It's very spooky. I like it. I'll come back to it often. But of course, when we talk about Vanish, we've talked about many things on this show. Of course, TFT lends itself to talking about a lot of cool, interesting, and even creepy stuff. We've could talk about vanished islands, and a lot of that is it's a mix of practical stuff, whereas simply islands because of volcanic activity or what have you, or earthquakes have simply fallen below the water, and some of them are or were there, and now they're just a matter of a couple of few meters below the water. So no big deal, right? We understand why that happened. But we have other islands that have disappeared that they've just disappeared. They're no longer where they are, and there's many fathoms of ocean where they should have been. Those are the ones that would fall into a tinfoil talk conversation. Of course, other things we have missing cultures, missing stuff. Atlantis hiding right there in the water in front of us. But of course, these are all interesting. We've touched on a couple of these a little bit. And there are other things that could get an advantage. We'll see what Thunder and Booster and anybody else who comes in and wants to talk about. But today I'm going to focus on one thing particularly. I was a bit surprised when I started researching this that there is so much behind it. I didn't know. How much there is behind the simple title of Vanished and therefore conspiracy theories. But the one I found, wow, dude. The one I found is pretty freaky. And of course, it's talking about the disappearances in national parks around the world. This is an international conversation. It's not an American one. And I'm going to get into this a little bit, and I'm going to explain to you what all is involved in this situation. Now, people disappear in parks all the time. right? And of course, the national park people and the searchers, and they're very professional. It's a cottage industry unto itself. They find the people either alive or not. If they found them alive, they just got lost, or they just idiots going into the forest thinking that they were some weekend warrior, and they're not. Other times they find them dead because they fell down a ravine, or animal attack, or cougars are a real problem in America particularly. But it's no big deal. They find the person or the body, right? But what about when they don't? Right. This is where it becomes interesting, and there's three categories actually. You got just regular people disappearing, and there's no trace of them at all. And and quite often these disappearances are when they're with groups of people hiking. It's not just a person going out hiking themselves. There are examples of that, but they just disappear. There's no trail to be found. There's no body parts. There's no anything, and often they're not found at all. And when they are found, they are far, far, far away from when they should have been, and they find them in very weird situations. Of course, they're dead. Often they're just bones, which isn't weird because dying in the forest, the wildlife's just going to remove you, right? But they'll find them intact skeletons, just missing everything else, right? And one of the things that's often found with these people is they're missing their shoes. Maybe one, maybe both. Hmm. Another group is college students. Now you say, okay, that's not odd, right? Because college kids are at that age where they're healthy and they're effervescent, and they decide to go out into the world together. But it's its own category, and a lot of time around, especially around rivers, is why I'm showing this picture. These college people would just disappear and never heard from him again. There was no evidence. The dogs can't find them. Of course, we know bloodhounds are really good at that kind of thing. I mean, you have certain dogs whose sense of smell is a million times greater than human smell. It's hard to even imagine that. But these dogs, it's almost as if they see with smell, right? Their olfactory abilities are incredible. But we got trained people who are out there. Sometimes you'll see hundreds and hundreds of people involved in these investigations. They'll even bring in National Guard and stuff like that to search for people. Of course, right? Of course. But they don't find anything, and if they do, they'll find them. Their bodies are in odd positions. They're far, far away from where they were originally, and they're missing their shoes. It's interesting. And then, of course, the last group, which is sadly the biggest group, of course, is talking about children. And I don't mean like 8, 9, 10, 12-year old. I mean like 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds, right? Little ones. And there are lots of them. There are thousands of them. And in each case, it's always this weird thing. If they find the kid, which about half the time they do, the kid is either far, far away from where they should have been. It's like, how the hell did they get there? Or they're exactly where they have searched many times and they weren't there before. And this could be days or weeks or months later, and they find these kids. And these kids, of course, are traumatized, but they're perfectly clean, right? Their clothing's not messed up, and they're missing their shoes. And even or maybe just one or two, but the bottom of their feet are clean as well. And it's complete phenomena. What the hell is going on? It's a very weird thing. Matter of fact, take a look at this map of clusters of activity of missing people. And if you look at that, where is it around? It's around mountains. It's very interesting. Yeah. Uh,
Bigfoots.
Well, I mean, this then it gets us into speculation what's going on, of course, and big feats are certainly part of that. But I think it goes deeper than that, Thundero. And there's a lot of speculation. There's some people that go the Squatch route, and because one of the things that is often related in these conversations is that, and we have examples of this going back, since we've been moving into the West. By the way, everybody, since we've been in America, but this happens all over the world, and of things of what looks like giant bears or giant wolves carrying off children. I mean, running with 3 legs and holding the kid cradled in one arm, at one leg as they run off, right? And a lot of these kids are way, way, way far away from where they're supposed to be. I'm not gonna give a bunch of, individual accounts because there are thousands of them. If you wanna go check that, you most certainly can. But all these kids say very similar things. The animals and these animal men is how they use these kids described. Of course, they're little kids, right? So it's hard to get a lot of good detail. But a lot of times they take care of them, they cuddle with them, oddly enough, and they feed them, right? And
Ah, it's big pedos.
well,
I
I mean,
figured out the mystery.
who knows? But it's there isn't accounts of sexual abuse actually, Booster. It's a very
Yet.
strange thing. Not only the fact that they search for these kids for, like I said, days, weeks, months, and they find nothing. And then all of a sudden they show up like on a main trail or not far from where they were taken, where they've been searched over and over and nothing. Dogs couldn't find them, no trace of nothing, right? And they find these they find these kids. Now other times they don't find the kids. They just disappear completely. Sometimes they do find the kids and they'll find their bodies or some of their bones strewn around. They'll find their clothing, which sometimes the animals or the birds will come and take it for making their nests and stuff, but they often find like their shoes just sitting there perfectly, one or two, right? Or they're just completely missing. Or a tooth, a single tooth taken and obviously placed because it hasn't been covered by debris or anything like that. It's just placed perfectly next to it. It's almost as if someone is setting up the scene to be found. And this has been happening for a very long time. And the people in the national park know quite a bit about it, but they don't like talking about it. Now, is this simply a shutdown order that's been given by the governments, which wouldn't surprise me, or is there something more going on? Of course, those who've lost children speculate there's more because there have been many cases where the actual authority who's supposed to be searching for the missing child actually get in the way of the investigation, which infuriates parents, of course. But we have other things. A lot. If you have a missing person, the local people and hundreds of citizens and National Guard often can be pulled out. But the actual American government, the federal government, doesn't get involved in these kind of things. It's outside of their jurisdiction, and it often causes confusion and trouble. But every time these specific cases with the missing shoe cases, the federal government shows up. The FBI gets involved. Why? They don't do it anywhere else, but on these cases they do. And when they show up, they show up with a detachment of like rangers or freaking berets. I mean, they're not playing around, and they're heavily armed, right? You get the National Guard will come in and help with searches. They don't have any weapons at all. Of course not. They're just searching for people, right? So it just the confusion goes on and on and on, and it always happens in these mountainous type of national parks around the world. And we could say, well, they're dangerous. It's a wild. There could be animals, and I agree. But we're not talking about these kind of cases that do happen where people are recovered, killed by an animal, fell down, whatever happened. Those things are normal. We're talking about these things that are not normal, right? And they tend to follow this strange thing. There's examples of little kids saying that they were taken by someone who looked just like their grandmother or their mother or something like that, but they thought that they were some alien or a robot or something like that because they had light coming out of their head. Now these are little teeny kids, so who knows what it is they were seeing? Right? It's hard. That's one of the big problems because most of these cases are little kids, right? And like I said, I'm not going to get into individual cases because it's just too much. But I would say this: there is a group of people in America, anyway, and other places, but in America particularly, who aren't surprised by this at all. And of course, that's the natives, right? The Indians. They know exactly what it is. They have no question whatsoever. Matter of fact, there's a lot of places they won't go anywhere near because they're like, oh, that's skinwalker territory, right? They know, and it's not shocking to them. And of course, this is never surprising. But I'm kind of curious about this angle because, most people don't talk about that. I think with Undero saying with the big feet seems to be the standard thing, right? But if you ever go and take some time to study a little bit about Coyote, he's kind of the Loki of the Native American religious stories, and he's very universal, by the way. You're talking about hundreds, if not thousands, of little cultures across the North American area, but yet there are certain gods that are universal, and Coyote is one of them. And of course, he's not just a coyote; he's a walking, talking coyote, right? And if you read some of his things, this stealing
Oh
of
my god.
people,
The first furry.
the first fairy, yeah, the first furry, at both. But there are many stories of him kind of tricking and messing with people by stealing children for a time, right? This is not new. This is ancient mythology, right? They have special dances with their dances. These are the skinwalker dances here with these Indians from this pretty old picture. Now, this is a very lengthy primer. I do apologize. I'm going to finish and come over to the other side, but this is what I wanted to talk about today because it's really shocking. And now there's one guy who has been become quite famous for bringing this to everyone's understanding, and it's this David Paulides, and he's the missing 411 guy, and his reciting of personal of accounts of these people is quite interesting. I do believe this is his map right here that he's created. But he is an interesting figure. If you want to go and search his name, you'll find a lot of information on this. But for me, before I come back over and we start talking this in group, the really weird, creepy thing, not about these kids disappearing, some being found, some not being found, the placing of body parts, their accounts of these bear men or these wolf men carrying them off, and visual accounts of people seeing that happen. The fact that they like to feed them little berries and other things like that. It's all creepy, but the super creepy thing is the shoes. I mean, what's going on with the shoes? I mean, because that's one of there are several factors that will tie into all of these accounts, this phenomena in general. But one of the main tenets of this phenomena is the shoes. What is up with the shoes? And who's doing it? Now, me personally, I don't have any trouble with shoes, man. I'm all about the shoes. As you can see, I respect shoes. Yeah. But maybe aliens
Nice.
don't. Aliens could be
Mm-hmm.
anti-shoe. Well, of course, that's the biggest thing. People saying the aliens. Of course, people always go to aliens first. I don't know why. Why don't we save aliens for like the last
Always
choice?
blaming
I
aliens,
know,
It's
right?
just give
Right?
them a break, guys. What did
Right?
the aliens do, really? Like maybe they took up a guy and fiddled with his butthole a little,
A
but
little,
that's it.
just a little. Yeah.
Like, let's just stop putting the blame on them,
Hmm.
guys. It's unnecessary now.
Yeah.
It's gratuitous at this
It is.
gratuitous.
Well, especially because this phenomena has been going on for centuries, if not more. Right? So it's not. Why do we bring in the modern concept of alien? But we do. But I do have to. Before I come back over the other side, Thunder, I do have to ask you a question. I can't trust
Hmm.
Booster's opinion, of course. Which do
Yeah,
you
yeah.
prefer, right or left?
I'm gonna have to go with left.
Yeah, me too.
The
Why is
other,
that?
yeah,
Why is that?
it's because the other one is very fake.
It,
There's a
it
lot
is.
of
Yeah, the one on the left though.
there's a lot of
Yeah,
plastic.
she looks
One on the left
athletic.
has no titties.
Yeah, that's all right.
That's all right,
I
Booster.
can't.
You
I
don't
can't work
understand.
with
We
that.
we know we understand. You don't understand. We get it. We get it. But trust
No,
me,
I
that
understand. I understand that she has no tits,
yes,
Chester.
well, the tatas are fun, all well and good, but they are
Booster.
auxiliary.
In reality, neither does the other one. Those are fake.
Those are fake. That is true.
And
That is
Booster,
true.
Well,
someday,
I can tell.
someday, Booster, if you do get to touch some boobs, you'll realize you like the real ones a lot.
Yeah.
I touched boobs once.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I had to put a bit of little levity in there at the end with that, of course. But whew, There we go. Now that's what I want to present today and want to talk about. Now, before we, get into that or not, let's take a look and see if anybody else has any other topic they want to cover. So
Yeah,
let's,
before you do that, Damnation says the one on the left has no head. I know that was
yeah,
a big selling point.
big selling point. Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
god.
All right, anybody? How about you, Model? You got any subjects about Vanish that you want to talk about, or you just want to kind of dig into this one?
Yeah, maybe we can get to the bottom of what happened to George.
I know exactly what happened with George, dude. I mean,
Choked on my food.
remember the dynamite. But no, George. I don't know him and Todd. They're so hyperbolic people, man. But how about you, Slick? You got any subject you want to cover? Slick.
I don't know. I think there's a conspiracy against something that I hold dear.
Mm-hmm.
I've been noticing this for a long time, you know, and it's really started to bother me.
Mm-hmm.
When I go online and I look for micro mini skirts,
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing that they're becoming less and less popular, or they're
Yeah.
just not being put into
Yeah.
the system.
It's
And I
true.
think that there is a conspiracy
I think
to
so.
take away the micro mini skirt from the western part of our
Yeah.
world,
So you're saying the
because
Yeah.
micro
I see
miniskirt
that.
has vanished? I get it. I get it.
Well, there's still some left, but they're rare and few breed. Whereas a few years ago, you'd see
Endangered.
them all over the place. They would be of many different colors,
Uh-huh.
many
Uh-huh.
different fabrics, many different textures, even.
Mm-hmm.
And now
Mm-hmm.
we're
Well,
stuck with very little, and I'm
if you
worried
go on
about it.
YouTube, if you go on YouTube and you look up, say, like Poison concert, 1986.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, it's like you're in a different world, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not talking like mini skirts. They're still there. I don't think they can get away with getting rid of them, but I see how they're going after the really small skirts,
Yeah, yeah.
the
No,
ones
I
that have a
love
6-inch
miniskirts, dude.
drop,
Easy access, baby. Yeah, the 80s was
and the ones that
awesome.
just hit. They're right on the hips. They show a little bit of the cleavage of the butt, and they're just above the bottom of the crotch. And those are they're evaporating.
Yeah,
It's a
I know.
terrible thing.
It's weird. It is
So it's,
horrible. It is
it's
horrible.
kind of a weird show I joined in on here today.
Yeah, well,
Oh, I just
comedy, attempts
googled
at
that
comedy.
Poison concert.
Yeah, hey, Poison, man. I saw them live. They were pretty good. But
Yeah, it's really progressive at the time to let them let trannies play on stage.
Absolutely.
well, in all seriousness, though, I did see a micro mini skirt recently. It kind of looked like dental floss on the girl, but I can't remember her name. You had me search her out the other day. It was some big old giant fat lady who was dancing naked on some awards Grammy show or something. What's her name?
But
Uh,
here's the weird thing. I see micro mini skirts for men all over the place.
Oh God, shut up.
What's up with
All right,
that?
we're definitely moving on. All right, fine. Now, so anyway, so there's only one subject that seems people are interested to get into. Or at least that I presented. So let's talk about it a little bit. Now, it's bizarre, right? I mean, because there's a clear delineation between normal, people getting lost in the woods and this phenomena. It's a clear delineation, right? And these things happen all the time. Their success rate is almost perfect because ultimately these dogs and they have thermal imaging with helicopters and et cetera, et cetera. They're able to kind of lock it down, even if it might take years later. They'll be found. But this phenomenon is a separate thing that is spooky all around it, and it seems like the American government, at least in the states, is aware that something weird is going on because they'll come and get involved in stuff that they would normally never touch. So, what do you think about the general concept of it, Model?
Well, you know me, Chester. I don't believe in magic,
Yeah.
so I always think that there's a rational explanation for these things, and of
I
course,
believe in magic in a young girl's eye.
Oh, shut up, Slick. God, he's all juiced up today. Damn it.
I'm telling you,
Yeah. Go ahead, Model.
much born. But and you know how I feel about space, so blaming aliens every time something happens,
That's
I don't buy either.
nonsense. Yeah.
But I do remember
It was
in
magic aliens.
in the 80s, when all the kids were going on milk cartons, it was a
Yeah,
major cultural thing.
it was.
And if you were alive, you remember what a big deal that was and how many kids were going missing.
Yeah.
But I know in places like in Walmart, they have a board for missing kids, and
Yeah.
there are tons and tons of missing kids.
There are.
So in the case of like state parks and that, it's very possible that it's animals, because I've seen coyotes attack animals, just like overwhelm them. I was in a deer stand, and there was a young, maybe a year old deer standing there, and a pack of coyotes got that thing over the top of a hill and disemboweled it in 30 seconds.
Sure. Yeah,
And
interestingly, coyotes are more dangerous than wolves. That's
absolutely.
very
But
true.
wolves are dangerous.
They
I
can.
grew up I grew up just a little over an hour from International Falls on the Canadian border.
Uh-huh.
And if you've never seen a timber wolf, it is a sight to
It's
behold.
big, dude.
They are massive.
Yeah, and that's another thing with the accounting of stories that has kind of been connected to this, whether it is or not, because getting into the whole skinwalker thing, because there are many accounts of very large coyotes or very large wolves. I mean, we're talking about ones whose backs come up to like almost the roof line of cars. That is a big, big dog, right? I mean, what is that? That's standing 4 feet at the
Oh yeah, yeah.
withers. That's
For a
big.
big male timber wolf, yeah, 4 feet is not abnormal. And if they get up on their hind legs, they're well over the height of a man.
They can be, yeah, they are big. These the reports are a little bit. Of course, they could be exaggerated because people are scared and they're not normally used to what they're seeing. But the whole animal thing has certainly been investigated deeply because that's the assumption, right? That's the automatic assumption. But with these kids, especially the kids are the creepiest thing. Although there is a theme going all the way across it. But these kids will be gone for days, weeks, even months, and they just show up perfectly clean, no damage and then the shoe thing. So it's certainly not coyotes doing that. And if they were walking around for surviving somehow in the forest for a matter of weeks or months, which is certainly possible, you would know immediately because their clothes would be tattered, they'd be filthy, but they're not. Their clothes are in perfect shape, they're clean.
Yeah, they're
Uh,
getting abducted and they're getting dropped back off.
yeah, well, that's a possibility
Almost
too.
almost certainly, yeah. And you can traumatize a child so much that they actually there's terminology and study for it when you can make a young mind, when you can make it split. They call it splitting,
Yeah,
and make that person kind of peel off into another direction of just where they leave a personality behind.
yeah, no, I know that's true.
And the
But
CIA
it's
studied that in depth.
They did. They did. That's true. But for me, it's the sheer numbers, though, model. I mean, it's just a
Oh, sure, yeah,
lot, dude.
yeah.
And I'm talking about in this specific phenomena. I'm not talking about the number of missing children or just missing people in general across the world. Those are huge numbers. Every country has huge numbers of missing people. That's a whole nother conversation, right? But I'm talking specifically about the woodland parks and the children disappearing and the whole shoe thing. That's a
So what
lot
are
of
those?
pedophiles, dude. That's a lot of pedophiles.
What are those numbers? Give us an idea of those numbers, because I don't know those numbers myself. As far as parks
Well, I mean, there are nearly a couple thousand every year. I think 1,900 was the average, right?
worldwide.
No, just in America.
Yeah,
Yeah.
300 and what 60 million people.
Yeah, no, I get that, and this is a drop in the bucket compared to the millions that go missing every year. It's true, I understand that, but is there a connection to it? And of course, we're here on TFT to talk about
Sure,
the
absolutely.
tinfoil talk of it. But this one, it's creepy though, because it could, it's obviously not animals, because those are a separate category that are sadly counted. These things are weird. Now, could it be pedophiles? I mean, I sure, but it's a lot. And what's the deal with the shoes, man?
Have you seen how many foot fetish freaks are online?
I didn't even know it was a thing until Booster told
It's
me all
it's
about it.
apparently, and what I used to think there's no way there's this many psychos, but 20 years on the internet tells me that it's about 50%. in the United that about half the people are whacked.
You think it's that
So
high? Because usually it's about
absolutely.
8 to 10% of any society is whacked, as you say.
No, I've read 45 to 50% mental illness of all kinds. So that includes like schizophrenia, mild depression, things like that. But some type of clinical mental illness is 50%.
Interesting. And
And
I
it
have no
seems to be
clue.
getting worse. It does seem to be getting worse. And I think there are certain things in our society that can bring that out more where it would
Yeah,
normally be suppressed.
Amy Schumer. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's pretty horrible.
Well, social media and things like that, it brings out tendencies that most people normally wouldn't access.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. Well, at least I got it was a little bit delayed. I guess that one wasn't great. I have to
Your
work on
guy
that.
that you had on your little slideshow there, what was his name? I think it's Daniel something. The guy who's bringing this to the forefront. You said
Yeah,
looked almost exactly like Kurt Russell. That's all. That was
he
the one.
does
That's what I
look like
got
a
out.
young
And
Kurt
what's up
Russell.
with all the Schumers?
Oh well, shoemakers, I guess, were a popular thing to do. And we're talking about shoes. Oh my God, his name isn't
That's
Schumer, by the way. His name is like Paulettes,
maybe
uh,
there's a link there.
which means strong-legged or something like that. It's not Schumer. It's not. It's not. Yeah, I don't know, Thunder. What do you think about this? I mean, model makes a very good point, but I think that what we're talking about is a little extreme to just throw it off to pedophiles, especially because there is an MO to the things that are happening. There's a consistency with the reports, and it's not, and there are thousands of them. What do you
Mhm.
think?
It could very well could just be some weird pedophile cult ritual thing. But from what you were saying, that there's not the kids aren't really reporting that they're being abused
No,
in any way. They're
no,
just being taken, and then their shoes are being taken for some reason.
yeah.
Um,
And there's no evidence
but
of sexual abuse either, excuse me, because of
right,
course, they check the children. There's no evidence of it at all.
But you know what? A lot of these elite pedophile groups
Elite.
or
Oh
these
my.
or the abductors, they're taking blood and things like that. So you could easily put a child out, run IVs off him for a couple of days, throw him back out in the woods.
Yep.
He'd never know of abuse.
Yeah, but why blood?
but
Why?
well, that wouldn't matter. He'd still have
Guys,
physical.
they blood dope with it.
Huh?
You know what blood doping is, right? That when
Obviously
athletes blood dope.
not. Clearly not.
Hang on. Before we get into that, um, it's over 600,000 people in America. In America alone, are become missing persons in a 1 year's time, roughly,
Yeah.
give or take.
Yeah.
Around about 10,000 or so of those are gone forever. They never find them. They never find a trace of them. They just
Yeah.
gone, like they never existed. So a good fraction of those are also children. Thousands of children just straight disappear. It is
Mhm.
more likely that if it's going to be pedophiles, those are the ones that they're grabbing, the ones that just disappear forever.
Well, and of course I know that happens, but I mean, let me give an example of Japan. Maybe it's not a good example, but every 2 or 3 years or so, there will be a case that'll come up. A kid will disappear on a hike, or just on something like that, and they search and search and search, and eventually they find the kid, and it was some bastard that took them, right? But it's like every 2 or 3 years that happens, right?
Mhm.
It's not monthly. It's not multiple a year. Now, Japan has a huge trouble with disappearance, but it's a completely different conversation, because they have actual companies here in Japan that you can pay a pretty substantial amount of money, and they will disappear you, right? And this is a kind of a little bit of a secret chronic problem in Japan. But Japan does so many things well, but the thing that they fail at miserably is social stuff, and it's a big problem. But I mean, it's a separate conversation, right? Because that is by choice. But just as an example of Japan, we get these pedophile things every now and then, but they're really rare. Now, I would agree that America being what it is, the melting pot and all, that we have more pedophiles. But do you think there are thousands of them?
Oh, millions.
Yes, millions.
It's an epidemic. The Trump administration has, last I checked, and this was like last year, over 6,000 different child traffickers have been arrested and tried under Trump. 6,000 traffickers. So in order to support,
Traffickers.
yeah, that means
Trafficking is
take,
one of the world's biggest problems.
Well, white
yes.
slavery. You're talking about white slavery.
No,
Well, sex trafficking
just
too. But
human trafficking.
yeah, they
Yes, white
capture
slavery.
kids off the streets or whatever. They bring them across the border and they just disappear. That's the end of them.
Well, it's not white because it's a lot of Hispanic
No,
kids
I
too.
know it's just a term. It means the selling. It's sex slavery is what white slavery means.
Yes.
I get what you mean. And the reason why is because in the Europe or the Eurasian area, so many of the Slavic, therefore the word slave, were stolen and sold into frickin' Muslim harems and other things like that. That's why it's called white slavery.
Yeah.
But anyway. Yeah, I know there's sick people in the world, but that's a lot, dude.
Millions and millions of them. Very, very sick.
Yes. You have to understand there's what, 7-8 billion people now. We don't know exactly, but probably closer to 8 now. A good percent, if that's less than 1% of 1%, if there's a million of them that are that way,
Yeah.
and we know there's probably more than that. The problem is the solution to this problem is execution, but nobody has the stones to do it anymore, except for a few Islamic countries that still do it for pedophilia.
Oh no,
Um,
the Muslims do some things right, actually. Um,
yes,
they do. But I mean,
but that's how you clean that out of your society, right? You
Yeah.
got to clean that out of your polity by literally scrubbing it out.
Yeah.
And there's I've seen estimates of over 20-30,000 kids a year that are trafficked quickly and easily. If they're busting 5-6,000 people running networks of sex trafficking,
Yeah, it's pretty
that
bad.
means there's hundreds of thousands that are being trafficked
Well,
through
yeah,
America.
This
Through America alone.
this normalization of sexual deviancy too is a very coordinated effort that we're
The-
currently experiencing.
That is a fair point. That is a fair point. You know, and even if you kind of give a little bit of a pass on what we call pedophilia for people who are interacting with 12, 13, 14, 16-year olds, which, historically, that's not pedophilia, right? Even if
Yes.
we give a pass to that, that's still a large number you're talking about. And particularly in this conversation, because we're talking about little children. We're not talking
Mhm.
about 9, 10, 12-year olds. That's never what get taken in this particular phenomena. They're 5 or less. These are little ones, right?
Mhm.
And more often than not, or more than 50% anyway, they're not harmed, right? So for me, if pedophilia is the answer, I mean, I don't know. I get it's hard for me to understand the concept because I'm around kids every day, dude. I'm a teacher. I teach kids every day. I mean, snotty nosed. They gotta tell them to sit up constantly to get them to focus. I mean, on and on and on. I mean, I love the kids, but I mean, they're a pain in the ass, right? Most of the time. And it's like, how are you finding any sexual attraction to that? Really? Really?
Well, yeah, it's a screw loose. But do you remember about 5 or 6 years ago when that very wealthy, connected Italian guy was busted with like 20,000 videos? You
Um,
remember that story?
that's a lot of videos, dude.
He had thousands of snuff films, like
You talk about
complete.
the president of Italy, or the prime minister, whatever his name was. You talk about that
No,
the
this was another guy.
Bellastoni, whatever his name was.
He was an international traveler and a businessman, and he was very well connected to very wealthy people.
Yeah,
And this guy, they say, had thousands of snuff films of
and
kids being murdered.
that's rough. And of course, we know that there's problems with that. There's been big cases in Europe, particularly of these rings being busted. There have been implications to royalty on this. Of course, Jeffrey Epstein, he didn't kill himself, by the way, is a perfect example of the conversation we're having. But I'm just really, I mean, I knew we were going to go this direction, but I just don't know if this particular phenomena applies model.
Okay, so if you have let's say 100,000 like very wealthy, and it's more than that, but 100,000 very wealthy, connected, politicians and businessmen that are into this kind of stuff. How many people does it take to satisfy that appetite for all of those people?
6,000?
More.
Well, that was a joke, but yeah.
Yeah, because what are they going to watch the same movie every day for a week? No, they always want a new one, a new one, a
Oh,
new one.
so you're suggesting this is simply like a movie making type of thing, or what? Okay, talk
It's
about that
that, but
blood
it's
doping thing
also
again. What's the blood
it's
doping
like
thing?
the
I thought that was Olympics.
no, it's transfusing with blood from young people.
Hmm.
It goes along the same kind of line of study of the stem cell research and all of that.
Ah, the vampirism. Oh, I see. Yeah.
No, it's not vampirism. It's actually replacing your blood with fresh, new blood periodically to rejuvenate the body. There are some countries where you can do that, where it's legal and people are legally donating this blood, and you can go and get these transfusions with, an 18-year-old person's blood or something.
You know,
It's
Booster's a young boy.
yeah, he is. That'd be a good use for him too.
So
What?
maybe he'd have some value.
You don't want my blood.
No, you
I
got the
was born in
diabetes.
England. No. I was born in England in the 90s. Put it together.
Okay,
Gay.
yeah, diabetes. But
The mad cow disease.
mad
Oh,
cow disease. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
there were a number of angles you could put together on that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay,
oh my god.
I get it. I get the point, but it's just a creepy thing, dude. It's very creepy. There's so many stories coming from these kids, and they're often talking about, these large bear-like animal men that are blamed, and it's quite universal. A lot of these, most of these kids are recounting that kind of situation, and it's like, so we're talking about some weird pedo blood doping ring that runs around the woods in bear costumes.
Well, haven't you seen like the hidden videos from Bohemian Grove and stuff like that, where
Yeah,
they're all wearing those big ornate
yeah,
hairy headdresses?
yeah,
And
that's true.
yeah, I mean, there are a bunch of weirdos out there. Yeah, I'm sure, Chester, you do believe there is real evil in the world.
Of course, I've seen it.
There's a lot of it, and it's more the
I've seen it.
norm.
Yeah. Yeah,
Then
I see it every day actually with a lot of the news we cover, because the thing about these progressives, which has nothing to do with our conversation today, but the thing about these progressives or regressives is they are insidious. It's evil. It is evil. But all right, okay, fine. I'm still baffled by the whole shoe thing, though. The shoe thing is weird. I don't get the shoe thing.
Is that the one thing you're just not comprehending is the shoes?
It's the one thing, yeah, because
Yeah.
it's very universal across thousands of cases. It's not once or
is it
twice
though?
this
Is
happened.
it thousands of cases? That's what I have a hard time grasping, and I just don't know. But is it thousands of
Well,
cases
they've
of
they've been documenting this since the 70s, dude. I mean, as far as full on
There are
modern documentation.
dozens.
And we have examples from the
Dozens.
19th and 18th century of similar reports, although I don't think the shoes were part of the big part of the explanation. But I mean, it is it is a lot, right? Of cases, even if we boil it down to a very small amount of things, it's still a weird coincidence. And I understand that we're not talking about the overall disappearance of people in general. I get that, because that's a much huger, much huger. Did I just go Trump?
future.
Much
I did.
huger.
Nice.
Much huger
Yeah.
number. I did. But all right, cool. Any other aspect of the topic you guys would like to cover, though?
I would.
Yeah.
I want to talk about mass vanishings. I
Okay.
think that's far more fun than pedophiles. There have been multiple, very mysterious mass vanishings throughout all of history, really.
Yeah.
Um, a hotbed of these seems to be China. There's a lot of really weird ones that happen in China, including Booster, a ghost train that happened in China.
Oh.
A train full of passengers that just straight vanished, gone. The only thing they found
Not
in
cool.
place of said train was a lake. that wasn't there before. No one knows how this happened or what happened or why it happened, but according to Chinese officials, which take that as with as much grain of salt as possible, that is the official story. Um, there are many different theories as to what happened to this train. Hey, I'm trying to find the location. Okay, so let's see. In 1945, a train carrying hundreds of passengers heading from Guangdong to Shanghai failed to reach its destination. An intensive search turned up no trace of the train or where the people had gone. The only thing that was shown was the odd that seemingly sprung was a lake that seemingly sprung up from nowhere.
Well, it's probably
Now,
where the train went. Probably
yeah,
a sinkhole came up or something like that.
but they couldn't find it. They've looked and looked. There's no evidence of the train at all. There's no metal. There's
Oh,
nothing that looks like a train.
yeah,
There's no tracks. It's just a lake is where the train should have been or would have been
right.
going through. Now it's just gone and
Well,
there's a lake there.
that's a cool story. But let me give you an example that
Cool
happened
story,
more.
bro.
Huh?
Cool story,
It is a
Chester
cool
bro.
gave you
story.
the cool story, bro.
But let me give you a more modern example that happened a few years ago. China has been trying to build like monorail super trains all across their country for quite a while, and of course we know the wonderful production value of the Chinese people, which is none. And of course these trains have trouble because they're poorly built, and they refuse to bring in any specialist or anything like that from outside because they can do it themselves. And anyway, they had a train derail. It was actually an elevated kind of monorail type of train, and it fell off and it crashed and it killed a whole bunch of people. So, what did China do? How did they address this? Did they have a big news report that was covered by the media and, apologies to all the families and sad and gnashing of teeth and drama that America would do? No, they basically sent in bulldozers and dump trucks and they buried it.
Yeah, and then they very quickly sold the scrap metal to themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, this is
Yeah.
how China deals with those things. So I think it is
However,
mysterious.
we're not just done with China. You're going to see a common theme through these ones I'm talking about.
Okay.
That was one of them. There was the other one that everybody knows about is Roanoke, Virginia. Roanoke, Virginia,
Roanoke,
all the
sure.
people, that whole entire colony of people basically just
That has
disappeared
been solved, though.
with only Croatan, or however you say that word, written on a tree and crow written in another tree. Um, in that place as well, when they went back, they found something very, very strange. Inside many of the buildings and houses, there were little pools of water that they couldn't explain. There is other cases where very similar things happened. One in Alaska in I think the 20s or the 30s. There was a small little fishing village, about 1,500 people, 2,000 people, somewhere around there. Fairly prosperous fishing village. It was the only one in the area. And this gentleman had gone there many times before. And every time he'd showed up, he had been greeted warmly. The people were happy he was there. Blah, 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 blah. Well, one time he decided to make a trip up to see these people again. And when he got there, nobody was there. Nobody was there. This normally very loud fishing village was dead silent. There was no one there at all. All he could hear was the wind blowing. When he looked in some of the buildings, he also found weird pools of water, frozen because it's Alaska, that shouldn't have been where they were. Made no sense. There seems to be some strange phenomena of people, and apparently things as well, in the case of that train, being liquefied for no apparent reason at all in mass numbers. 200, 300, 2,000 people just gone. The same phenomena has happened. I think there was another case too. Hang on, I'm trying to remember the name of it.
Hey man, it's just a bunch of thirsty boys.
Those are the three main ones. But basically, there's a lot of different theories. There's a more out there theory, which is actually from Dean Koontz, the writer, the sci-fi writer,
Yeah.
that there's some weird ectoplasmic thing that's existed in the Earth since the dawn of time,
I can
and every
buy it.
so often it just eats people, and that's what it leaves behind is just the water.
Ah,
Those people are moving
that
water.
explains that book and thus following movie he made. It was a pretty good one, actually.
Yes,
I
that's
don't
where he
know.
got it from. It's called the Proteus theory,
I don't know, guys.
which it's
I don't-
supposedly a creature that eats all of the essence of a person. Beside, they don't need the water though, so they just leave the water.
I
Which
just
we
think it's a bunch of thirsty boys. That's all.
Confirmed. Jimmy solved the mystery.
No, it's interesting though. I didn't know about the water connection because there are mass disappearances of people and villages, and there are several Arctic expeditions that disappeared. There are some Antarctic ones as well. There, of course, are disappearances in South America of entire cultures just wiped out, or some seemingly gone with no evidence. We have examples of archaeologically of many towns and cities throughout history that have been found and they were just abandoned. They don't even know why. Even the famous Troy, which of course has been found and shown, and it's many layers. It seems that Troy was just abandoned, completely abandoned, and this is long after the whole Greek Troy War. Trojan War. So this is a kind of running theme. These things do happen. Now, there is a request here from Curious 2A in the chat. It says, Chester, don't forget to overlay the disappearance map with the cavern system. Okay. I went and found it. So let me bring this over here. Here is the cave system in America. And here is, let me come back over here to this. And here is this map. And I see your point. I see your point. Yeah. Now, of course, I think what Curious was talking about is the fact that there is supposed to be some subterranean species living underground, and I get that, which we could do on a TFT someday, I suppose. But
Lizard people.
well, the lizard people, yeah. But of course, this is connected because if you go back to the ancient stories, that when they're talking about how the creators, whatever you want to call them, they created one group first, and that group failed because they had too much free will. Then they created a second group, which was us. And the first group came and helped us escape, and there was a big war that came out of it. And then the third attempt that
Didn't that happen on Assassin's Creed?
Oh man, that sure. Why not take stories from the past, dude? And then they made
Wow.
the creators made a third group, and the solution they came up with the third group was that using the base monkey man that they were using was there was too much emotion involved, and that was what they thought was a problem. So the third group they created, they based upon reptilian DNA or essence, as they would say, and that was the perfect creation that has not given them trouble ever since. These are the ancient stories. That's what they say, and they do seem to collaborate with the modern telling of things. Now, does that simply mean people are reading those old stories and then making assumption? I don't know. But if you look at these two maps, boy, they're exactly right, dude. Right? Let me bring it up again. Right? There it is. There it is.
Yeah, they're perfect places to dump bodies. In
Yeah.
the 70s,
Fair
60s,
point.
and 70s, a lot of bodies were getting dumped in the oil states in the old wells. They were getting thrown down the old well
Yeah.
bores.
True. Yeah. Interesting conversations we have today. Ranging from pedophilia to body eating ooze seeping from the planet. Wow.
I learned from Kat very recently. I've been on a kick lately. I consume a ton of content on YouTube because I'm normally a lot of time hours, 14 hours a day doing a 3D model or something. So I'm just letting things play. So there's noise.
Yeah.
But I've been watching these cold case file shows
Mhm.
and these forensic shows, and there's hundreds and hundreds of these videos on YouTube. But uh, Kat recently told me that there's a highway up there called the Highway of Tears because
Mhm.
so many, and specifically women, but all people of all types, but mostly women, are either found dead or disappear on that road. So I really do, not to take from one conspiracy or the other, to actually put it into a different angle of something that I don't think is getting addressed, and that's you know either authorities don't know how to deal with it, or a lot of very well connected people are involved.
Mhm.
That's what I would say is the tinfoil.
Yeah, no, I agree, and the one like I mentioned that in my introduction. It's the government involvement is very strange in specific cases. Like I said, there's plenty of cases that are just normal disappearances or people getting lost, and they follow a very standard format. But with these particular ones, the federal government gets involved in America, and that's not something they normally do. And when they get involved, they come heavy, right? And it's so therefore the American government is aware of what's going on. Now that doesn't mean that they're alien hunting or anything like that. It could be as simple as a model has said, and there's some high-ranking pedophilia group that has a lot of power and access inside the government, and therefore they're just trying to shut it down. It could be as simple as that, and we know it's a
Well,
problem.
there is no doubt, because
Yeah,
it would not be that difficult to deal with these. So why haven't the U.S. Marshals or the Marines gone in to that guest list on that flight manifest over Epstein's Island? Why haven't they gone down that list and arrested every single person?
because there's Clintons on it.
Absolutely, there's very well connected um, people, high ranking, as far
Now,
as in that political elite. And the type of people, the type personalities that and usually end up in corporate management or politics, or it's the same type of beta personalities, where your A types are usually going off and innovating and being entrepreneurs, but your B types they want that power. But you end up with that archetype of people
mhm, yeah.
who are not your best and brightest, are in these positions of
Yeah,
leadership.
that's fair. Yeah, he's talking about Soy Boys Booster,
So let's say
Oh,
you have
Booster.
I am not. I
Booster's
am not a soy boy.
a psychopath. Let's
Ah,
just
Mhm.
pretend.
Yeah, yeah.
pretend.
We'll pretend that. Yeah,
Right. So, and he's
yeah.
abducting and he's doing all this weird stuff, and
Mhm.
a normal person like myself comes along and says, "Hey, what's going on here?
Mhm.
What
Mhm.
what would be an
They'll never
obvious
find the bodies, model.
no, you oh, it's got to be
Oh,
a Wendigo. It's got to, that's where even we can parallel that to some of the alien stuff, where what the Air Force did. They took their own testing and they were just like, oh, geez, unidentified flying objects. And
Well, how do you explain Skinwalker Ranch then?
Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah, that's a legitimate phenomena that has been researched to death, and there's absolutely a place that something's going on. Not only did
Is
the
there?
original
Is
reports,
there?
well, government got involved, billionaires got involved. There's video evidence, which is weird. I mean, Skinwalker Ranch is something that you should go and look into, because the video evidence alone is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely will. I don't think there's any magical thing going on. I think it's
I,
just flat out
I never
evil to
use the
keep it
word
in.
magic. What I'm trying to present, as far as TFT today is concerned, is the fact that this is a phenomenon that's been going on, at least in the Americas, for a very, very long time. And the Native American peoples are well aware of it, and they have certain areas that they make sure they stay away from. I'm getting a lot of echo for some reason. I don't know why. This is not a mystery to the natives. For them, they know what it is. It's the skinwalkers, and the skinwalkers come from Coyote, right? So, I mean, now that's a lot of mysticism involved with that, sure. But what I'm saying is maybe it's something that is older than simply the modern European conquering of the Americas. Hmm.
Yeah, with the numbers involved, you would think at some point there would be something a definitive piece of evidence. It's like
Yeah,
you say, it is a lot. It's a lot of people, a lot of
yeah,
kids. So why hasn't, if it is something nefarious like this, why hasn't it ever been exposed?
sure.
Someone always talks at some point.
Yeah, but I mean, we have examples, multiple examples of, a bunch of kids playing around in the woods, running around with their friends, and right next to them, and they're gone, never found. We have examples of people walking on trails in groups, and either the person at the front or the person in the back just disappears, gone, never seen again. I mean, it's not like these people are individuals walking around the woods. They're like people that are in groups, and just even amongst, right with a group right there, these people would just disappear, right?
Sure, yeah.
It's
I
weird.
just recently watched one about a kid in a national park who was with his family
Yeah.
and walking between one group, one camp to the other, disappeared. So
Yeah, yeah, it is surely bizarre, and I understand where the conspiracy theory comes from, and that's the thing we talk about over here. Of course, is the fact that there's always a kernel of truth to any of these kind of mythologies and legends, and of course, modern day conspiracies. But anyway. I think we've covered this subject pretty well. It's interesting. Let me come over and see what the chat has to say. All right, let's see here. Skinwalker Ranch could be its own TFT. It could be, Zachary. You're absolutely right. Justice for Elrod. What's going on now? I once mysteriously vanished from a drawn and quartered. You did, Elrod. That is true. No, the first created race were the Shoggoths, but they turned on their masters. Well, dude, the Cthulhu stuff coming from Lovecraft was playing on a lot of the ancient stories. I mean, nothing comes from nothing, right? Big feets love. We've decided that big feets is the proper term. Big feets love shoes. Yeah, no, it's weird, dude. It's so weird. Let me see here. Several years ago, a bunch of humans,
Oh,
human
it's
feet.
a gay Bigfoot. That's what it is. He's just coming in. He's like, oh my goodness, those shoes are adorbs. I gotta have them. Get them to me. Get them. No, get away. Get away.
All
He
right.
snatches the kid.
Thank you,
Give me the
Booster.
shoes.
Kuzmeni says, "Thank goodness I live in West Virginia. I think it's probably illegal here for men to wear miniskirts." Oh God, back to that. George. Oh yeah, that guy. Yeah, I don't know, man. George, he'll come back eventually, maybe.
He
Slick Jimmy
vanished.
rocks. Sweet. Yeah, there's a lot of just kind of spoofing and joking going on in the chat, which is awesome. North American dingoes. Yes. Now, before I get out of here and finish for today, I do want to go back to what Thundera was talking about because I felt we glossed over that a little bit too much. Go a little bit
Thank you, my
deeper.
people. My people.
Yeah,
Thank you,
well,
my
it's
people.
your fault, Slick. You did it.
Well, there's more besides just the weird water connection that seems to be at a lot of these mass disappearances, and those were the only three that I had brought up. There's others that have weird
We know
pools.
what truly causes the water effect. People just got to get wet sometimes. That's all I'm saying.
Ring the bell, baby.
There's obviously the really famous mass disappearance. It happens to the military a lot, it seems. Now that could be obviously just be down to they got caught by the enemy and wiped
Fog
out.
of war, yeah.
But usually, if that's the case, and that's happened before, there's some evidence of them still. Their armor, if it's an old war, their weapons, tracks. Thousands of people marching across land makes a mess. The Ninth Legion, the Roman Ninth Legion, one of the most fearsome legions to ever exist. In fact, fought all over the world defending the empire, just vanished up in, I believe, Scotland.
Yeah.
In 109 AD, just gone. There've been movies about it, books about it.
Yeah.
It could be that the Scots caught them off guard and just took all their stuff, and that was it. Never saw them again.
Well,
but
there was some evidence.
I think
that
it was
came up.
leprechauns.
Oh, goodness gracious. Slick is just, he's out to get you today, Thundera. He's on you. But that whole, you talk about the Ninth Legion, that is a very interesting topic, and there have been movies made about it. But there was evidence put forward by, I can't remember that mayor's name, or governor's name, sorry. There was a governor, damn it. Some Italian dude, Roman dude. But anyway, they did find a little bit of evidence because it seems that the Picts ate them.
Nom.
Nom.
It very well could be. Like I said, they could have caught them off guard or unaware, or just overwhelmed them, and that was it. That was the end of them.
There is a reason they built Hadrian's Wall, just so you know.
Yes, they were terrified of it.
They were feeling a little pickish.
a little peckish, yeah.
But there's other ones
It's been a long, hard winter up in the Highlands, and
going back to China.
Romans are always so fat.
Yeah, that's
This
true.
one's a
But hold on, before you
another
do that,
extreme
Thunder.
one.
Before you do that, Thunder, I can't let that go. I
Oh,
do apologize. The thing is you go back in Roman times, right? That picks the Romans were this terrifying machine that is Rome was so terrified of wild men running around Scotland that they built a frickin' wall across the
yeah.
entire island, right? And now what do we have? We got a bunch of women up there in Scotland saying, "Don't say things that make people feel bad. Where are your balls, Scotland? What happened to you? What the
Well,
hell happened to you, Scotland? You used to
the
be
worst part
men.
is that
You used to be
oh,
terrifying, Scottish Highlanders. Get a grip if you're women, Scotland. What the hell?"
I think there's going to be a
They're just a bunch of men in skirts.
I think there's going to be a swing. I think you're going to start seeing some manliness start to rise back up. It had a good
I
run.
hope so. Because
Bunch of men
I
in
got a
mini
bunch of
skirts.
Scottish
That's
in
all I'm
me.
saying.
I am a Strathclyde after all, as far as
well, the
you
worst
know.
part about it is the women used to be just as much of badasses.
Oh yeah,
There was plenty of
they
Celtic
did.
female warriors and generals and
That's true.
warrior queens
That's true.
that scared the shit out of the Romans, terrified
It
them.
wasn't until the Romans and then later Catholics that Europe actually moved away from egalitarianism. In the old Celtic ways, you do whatever you do best for the community, and it didn't care about your gender whatsoever. That's why shield maidens are a real thing, right?
Yes.
But I'm just saying, Scotland has lost its balls in a major way. I mean, just go look at some of the news coming out. It is absolutely insanity. Scotland, one of the most terrifying warrior races of all time. I mean, what's the next? Someone's going to tell me the Comanche are over there supporting transgenderism. I mean, really?
Well, they're probably too busy being stoned out of their minds or drunk,
Maybe,
most of
but I mean, because that's another terrifying group. The Comanche were
Look at
badass,
look
dude.
at Scandinavia. What's happened to the the Vikings?
Yeah, I know,
It's
right?
it's
them. You
just
can't
it's
even go to
outlandish.
Well, they're a lot
they
more
they
organized group,
got out
but
of
yeah,
Europe.
huh?
The Germans crushed the Romans repeatedly, and
Yep,
they were terrified of them. And now look
yep,
at Germany; they've completely capitulated to globalism to the point where they continuously elect a woman who's done nothing but destroy their country.
yeah.
I don't
Well,
know why,
Merkel.
but they do. Um, it, it it's a shame. I think he's right though. I think we're at the end of this. This
yeah,
neoliberal love
yeah,
everybody hippie crap is done. It's
yeah.
over.
I'm sorry though, Thunder. Go ahead and continue. I just couldn't let that go
Fine. I
because I
only have
mean,
one more.
it's Scotland.
There's another
It depresses me.
there's another weird one going back to China again. This one is in right before technically World War II in 1937. The Sino-Japanese second Sino-Japanese War or third, I don't remember. There were so many.
Sino, just
Whatever.
doesn't matter. But
Um, but right before what would become known as the one of the most brutal times, the rape of Nanking,
oh yeah,
one of those brutal incidents to ever happen ever, as far as we know. There was effectively a Chinese colonel, Li Fuxian, I think is how you pronounce it, who had been fighting against the Japanese for a long time. There was 3,000 heavily armed reinforcement troops along a 2-mile line in order to defend a major strategic bridge over the Yangtze River, where they waited for the onslaught. They set up everything because they knew they were coming. These 3,000 troops were coming. They were heading right for them. A few days later, the colonel gets a message from one of his people, one of his scouts or whatever, that he has to come see. And they go out to where they were, and they were all gone. And not just gone, no trace, no tracks for the machinery or the vehicles. Not one weapon was left behind, not one helmet, nothing. It's like they literally were just sucked away in a wind, took everything up, and they were gone. Just mass vanishings like that have happened all throughout history, all over the world, in America, in China, in Europe, all over. I'm sure you can look up, if you look up a list of them, you could probably find thousands of them where large numbers of people just gone, no explanation.
yeah.
There was one more too. There was one in Brazil uh, recently, I think like 30 or 40 years ago, so pretty recent, where a 600-person village in Brazil was just gone. One day it was there, the next day it wasn't. The only thing they found was written on a chalkboard, uh, there is no salvation, and next to that was one single pistol that had been fired one time, and everybody else was gone. Nobody, no explanation.
Yeah. And these things, these things happen. Like, and it's not just people. It's also places. Like, one of the most famous stories in Arabia is I can't remember the name of the city. It starts with a K. But anyway, there was a city that was under siege. Reports were coming into the caliphate at the time, and that the city was under siege by jinn. Oddly enough, was a report. Of course, the leader thought that was nonsense, and he sent out an army to go and to reinforce and figure out what was going on. I could keep in mind at this time, the Islam was not only murdering anyone who they could find to either join us or die, they were also murdering each other, which hasn't stopped. But nevertheless, they sent this army out, and not only could they not find any aggressor, they couldn't find the city. It was gone. It was completely gone, and it's never been seen since. There's been no
And where did I put
archaeological
that city?
finding. Huh?
Now, where did I put that city?
Well, that's a good point. What happened with that city, dude? Was he making a joke and I missed it?
Probably.
I think so.
Yeah, probably. Uh, but I mean, these examples are continuous. Now, a lot of it can be easily explained away, and probably all of it can be explained away. But it is fascinating conversation, I think, for sure. And Yeah, vanished places and people. It's very, very interesting. Booster, do you have anything intelligible to add today?
Oh no, God no.
God, no. Have you ever? What exactly have you studied in your life? I'm just kind of curious. I think we should do a TFT on Booster's brain.
Oh, let's not. No one needs to know about that.
Yeah,
It's
well,
a mess of video games and waifus.
probably Dai Makuras.
Yeah.
But no, I'm just curious. What did they
Noel
teach
just-
you in
Noel
school,
just
though,
know.
Booster? Did they educate you at all?
Oh, I gotta go.
Well, oh no, because it just seems that of course I'm joking about Booster. He's actually quite a smart guy, but he's also in New Zealand. But over in the
Yeah.
West, I do see a lot of very low end education. Now, this is not part of today's conversation, but I'm just kind of curious what happened to the education system in America.
Oh, it was liberalized. End of story.
The communist.
There you go.
The progressives got a hold of it. Yeah, they dumbed it down.
Yeah, it's sad. I
We
mean,
used to have a fantastic education system. Have you ever looked at any of those? People periodically will post the exams from these schools in the 1850s, late 1800s.
sure.
It's amazing. I see stuff on there like, I don't even know what that is.
Well,
It's like a 7th grade quiz.
It is very strange that you say that because now I lived in a very rich area, so maybe this is the reason why. But when I was young, I mean, they were teaching us the classic stuff like Greek and Latin from a very young age. But I've talked to many people since, and they're like, "Oh, I never studied that." And it used to be standard to study the Greek and Latin so that you could study the old philosophies in the original language and the old, the Greek philosophers and scientists and stuff like that. But it seems like they haven't, that most people don't have that kind of education whatsoever.
How are they going to scam you if you can read the source for the
Absolutely.
entire basis of our civilization? If you can do that, if you can read Latin and Greek, you pretty much get the West.
Yeah, sure.
If you got that, they can't scam you. It's impossible for them to scam you
You
out
can't
of
even
civilization.
you can't even read the original text for the Bernstein Bears.
I do believe it's Berenstain. Berenstain. Yeah. Yeah, Mandela always comes in. Why does Mandela always keep coming back up? But I just think it's really sad because all those kids that grew up with me in that area, we had that kind of education. And it seems like so many other people my age didn't have it. I mean, several of you guys are around my age. Did you guys study the classics at all?
Absolutely. Yeah,
You did.
absolutely.
Okay,
I
you
did.
did. All right. Well, all right. So it's
I did
it's
by choice.
after us they stopped doing
But
it.
I'm an
Okay.
autodidact.
I do think it was a regional thing though, because I transferred my senior year. It's that horror story you hear about. My parents moved 2 months into my senior year, and I moved from a northern school up in northern Minnesota to a school in North Carolina, and the difference in the education you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, that's true.
I barely even stayed awake for my senior year, and I kept my grade point average through. I mean, it's just autopilot.
Mm.
So it is there. It's a regional thing. And I never realized how lucky I was and how good our schools were up there in the Great White North.
Yeah, no, New
Where I
England as
grew up,
well.
the elementary school I went to was one of the best in the state for sure, probably the best in the state. But then I went to a Christian academy for like high school, so I learned Greek and Latin, at least cursory knowledge of it that I can generally read it. Um, I don't know if I still can. I haven't tried in a really long time, but I'm sure I could. So I did that. But then when I was in elementary school, you had to do book reports and stuff. And for whatever reason, I always loved ancient history. So I would make sure to do the writings of the ancients. So I would do
Huh.
like the Iliad and the Odyssey. Was a book report I did in like fourth grade, and my
Yeah,
teacher
sure.
couldn't believe I wanted to do it. And I was like, "Yeah, no, I want to do it." And it was just that.
Yeah, and they do not have those kids reading those things anymore. They're yeah, Moby Dick and things like that, which it's pretty dry and it's a hard read for kids, but there's a reason for it.
Well, I have an old book that was from just before the turn of the last century, so it was like 1894, and it came from a library of my grandmother, and this was basically the stories, about 20 of them, of Shakespeare, and they kind of synopsized the stories so you could understand them a little bit easier, and they added some of the greater quotes. But this book was for people who were 8 years old, so in third grade.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah. Oh yeah.
that,
But they used to push us all the time. It doesn't seem like they push them anymore. But on to get back to our topic and to finish up for today. Um, when I was a kid, I probably told this before, but when I was a kid, I used to have to walk to school for until I got a car. But between my home and my school, it was only like a 20-30 minute walk, right? But between my home and my school was an old library. It was in a very old building in New England, and it was a library. Up on the top floor, they had newspapers going back way, way back, hundreds of years, right? And I would go up and I'd read these newspapers after I got done with school. I'd just sit up there, I'd do a little homework, and I would read these newspapers. And it was really interesting to read them because these type of I don't know, you would call it. These kind of UFO sightings and weird supernatural sightings and stuff like that, where these newspapers were full of them, right? We're talking about from a couple hundred-year ago newspaper, right? But yet it's talking about this strange objects in the sky and disappearances and all kind of things like that. So this phenomena is certainly not new. It's old. And if you ever have an opportunity to go to a library, now I got to read them on the actual paper, but of course I think microfiche, or I don't know if that's probably archaic to even say, but you go to libraries, you could probably find a lot of these things on microfiche or digitalized these days. And I would encourage you to go read some newspapers from the 19th century, from the 18th century even, and see what these people were talking about back in those days. I think you'd be surprised how similar it is to our modern world. Anyway, so let's get some closing statements from everybody here while I go take a look at the chat. Let's start with Slick, who's been very helpful today.
uh, I just want people to understand that there's a problem out there in the world, and we need to stop it. We need to stop this happening. We need to stop the erasure of micro miniskirts. And if you don't do this, if you don't press it and let people know, speak up, they'll be gone forever. Namaste.
Namaste. Yeah. Rodwell Stevens says, we was Vikings. I get the joke. Shilland is here. Topher says taxpayers in rich areas expect pre-law studies from kids from beginning Latin. Yeah, I guess so. Like I said, I did live in a rich area. I was very fortunate in that way, but we said a lot of those things. I'm not talking about high school. I'm talking about elementary school, like fifth, sixth year, and junior high school as well. Yeah, yeah. And girls at school don't twerk to Aristotle. I guess they don't. Thundero,
Yes.
closing
Last
statement,
statement.
sir.
Closing words. Yeah. Watch your kids. Anybody listening? You got kids?
Yeah.
Keep them always within arm's reach, or keep an hand on them if you have to. There's a lot of sick weirdos out there, and a lot of weird stuff that happens with children has been in our folklore and our world forever.
Hmm.
So make sure you keep a close eye on them. Never think it's safe, because unfortunately we don't live in a safe world anymore. We don't live in should land. We live in a land where there's a bunch of deviants. So watch your kids,
Hmm.
and yeah, try not to vanish, because a lot of people seem to disappear.
Yeah, yeah, there's a high number. It's pretty sad. More so than the topics we were talking about today. I think one of the a very shocking account from when I was doing my studies this week was this young family. They had a little, I think it was 3-year-old kid. They ended up not finding the kid, but they did find his like clothing and a shoe and a tooth. But nevertheless. They had basically were on hiking with their 3-year-old, which seems odd to me, but nevertheless. And they stopped. They put down their pack, and the mother took out a bottle of water, handed it to the father, and then took another bottle of water to hand to the child, and the child was gone. So what is that? 30 seconds? 50 seconds? A
Yep.
minute max? I don't even think it could be that long. So there are examples of these children and people vanishing from right next to people in very short periods of time. So it's whatever it is, it's not cool. Model.
Yeah, you know, we're very fortunate now to have access to huge amounts of information, but it's not easy because there's so much disinformation. So don't be lazy. Don't just ask someone for a link. Take some initiative and
Yeah.
and go and learn about your world a little bit. I think a lot of people are not doing that, or they take whatever's the first thing they see and hear and get involved.
Yeah, yeah, and something you could do if you guys are interested, because, like I said, I always enjoy having new voices come on and have conversations. When we announce, what we're going to do for TFT, I go and I do research. I actually do. I search through the internet, look for stories and articles, and then I'll go find videos to watch and listen to, and then I'll create the what I'm going to talk about in my head, right? It's not a big deal. It's not like I spend hours and hours on it, but I spend a little bit of time. Do the same thing. You go and do the research yourself, and maybe you have something you want to say. Maybe it's something interests you to the point that you want to come on and have a conversation about it. But that is one thing I 100% hate is this listen and believe mentality. That is stupid. And I don't get it because when I was a kid, all my teachers told me just the opposite. Do not listen and believe. Make your own judgment. This was always taught to me growing up by so many
Listen,
teachers.
verify, then believe.
Yeah, that's fine, but I'm just saying I was always taught to seek out your own truth, right? And it seems like this has been completely abandoned. So
And there's nothing wrong with saying I don't know.
yeah, yeah, exactly, dude. That is very true. So it seems like a lot of people don't like to do that. Now I know certain cultures, like say China, they refuse to say they don't know. They'd rather just point and blame Booster. But but
It's always my fault. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, always getting blamed. But
Yeah.
anyway, Booster, what you got to say, dude?
Well, to stick to the theme of vanishing today, I would just like to say, Dad, if you're out there, I know you've moved to Auckland and things don't go well with Mum, but your little boy, James, I just turned 28 the other day. You didn't call. I'm just wondering where you're at. It's been a few years now. I'm not doing very well. If you just want to, your little boy James, he's He's someone that can call him back. Just tell him he's doing okay. Just Daddy.
Thank you, Booster. Namaste, indeed. Slick, would you like to take over responsibilities of being Booster's daddy?
I think I have already. I've told him a bunch of times what he should do.
All right, there you go.
Yes.
All right. So you got a new
I
daddy
endorse that.
now.
Hooray, new dad.
Go ahead, model.
Hooray!
And Booster's new dad lives just as far away. As
Yeah,
the
right,
old one.
right. More so.
Uh,
Okay, well, I'm going to do something quite rare today as I finish out the show. I'm going to namaste us out. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Yes,
Indeed.
indeed. And I'm going to keep it very sweet and very short. Oh, did I flip that? I think I did. Short and sweet. Yeah. But here it is. You guys ready? Are you ready? Are you ready?
Huh.
Here it is.
Huh.
Ignorance is bliss.
that was shit.
Namaste. Yeah.
I'm not namasteing that.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for coming in today. It was a lot of fun. We'll definitely check you out with everything this week. Keep in mind, tomorrow is the 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time show, which we used to call the California show. No, it's just the comics news today, and we have everything else as well. I do believe that the Amunche Isles campaign going on at Bugbear's Basement. This is probably the last actual episode, and then we'll have like an epilogue after that. And then we'll see what comes after that. We're having a lot of fun though. But the last thing we need to do, even though we just kind of semi namaste, is make a quick decision. What are we talking about next week for TFT? Because I think we already talked about that, Booster. What is our subject?
I don't know, but you were bringing up someone's ranch or something earlier, and someone saying you could do a whole episode on that.
You could. Do you
You
guys
should
want to?
try to. You should try to get Tim Lim and grab one of these subjects that he keeps asking about.
Yeah, well,
Excuse me. We
all right,
could.
I'll slide into his DMs. I'll send him some bunny gifts, and he'll be putting my hands.
You will. No, of course, we'd love to have Tim come back and have a conversation. Yeah, so why don't you do that, Booster? See what Tim would like to talk about, and we'll announce it on a coming show. So great idea, model. Great idea. All right, guys. We'll check you out later. Thank you. Later.
Aloha.
Mahalo.